President George Bush faces the prospect of an inquiry into allegations that he was implicated in delaying the release of American hostages in Iran for political gain. A former aide to President Carter has claimed that a deal was struck with Iran in 1980 by the Reagan-Bush campaign to ensure that the hostages were not released before the presidential election in November of that year. Now, the Iranian president at that time, Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, has told Channel 4 News there was a secret deal and that it involved arms. He says he believes that George Bush was involved in organizing that deal. 52 American hostages who'd been held in Tehran for more than a year were released immediately after President Reagan took office. Our Washington correspondent David Smith now reports on the charges which threaten to rock the Bush administration.
The way the politicians on Capitol Hill are going about this today shows just how delicate and potentially explosive this latest Iran affair is. Within the next hour, in a private informal session, senior members of the Congress will hear allegations that Ronald Reagan and George Bush effectively did a deal with the mullahs of Iran to keep American hostages in captivity in Tehran until Jimmy Carter left the White House and Mr. Reagan became president in 1981.
Here they are now. Is there any word about the hostages? Have they taken off?
The fact that it turned out that way, with President Reagan being sworn in a matter of minutes before the hostage release began, has long since been a cause of suspicion here.
President of the United States.
Significantly, the chief interrogated this afternoon will be Lee Hamilton, the congressman who led the Iran-Contra hearings in 1987.
If there's any truth to this story, what are the implications?
Oh, they're enormous. I mean, in the first place, it would undermine the entire legitimacy of the Reagan and now the Bush administration. Undermine it completely because, one, it would have helped get Reagan elected and Bush, too, as vice president. And then there's the allegation that Bush himself was involved in something that would be, at the least, a dirty trick, at the worst, a punishable criminal offense.
Impeachment?
I can't imagine it leading to impeachment, but that's certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
The story's been around for 11 years, but it's because this man, Gary Sick, is saying it today that it's being taken seriously. Mr. Sick was the Middle East specialist on President Carter's National Security Council, and he also worked for Ronald Reagan briefly. He was at President Carter's side throughout the long months of the hostage crisis. This morning he told us it was the evidence, not a personal act, that made him speak out.
Over the past 2 years, I've been talking to more than 100 different people, doing interviews, and putting together a very detailed chronology of the events that took place during that time. And during the last 6 to 8 months, a new piece of information has come my way that I simply had not known about before.
The new information is an eyewitness account of meetings held by this man, William Casey, the late director of the CIA, and back in 1980, the head of the Reagan-Bush election campaign. Mr. Casey is said to have met in Washington, here at the Mayflower Hotel, then Paris and Madrid, with Iranian officials during the summer and autumn of 1980. And he's alleged to have promised the Iranians help, financial and military, if they held up the release of those hostages. Failure to get the hostages free before Election Day was seen by many as the major factor in Jimmy Carter's defeat. Those close to Bill Casey have never denied those meetings. Indeed, they say the plot was typical of the man. And we do now know that working with Mr. Casey on this was Donald Gregg, once Mr. Bush's national security advisor. Inevitably then, President Bush's potential role 11 years ago is now a subject for scrutiny. Down the years, some have linked the president directly with it. 5 of Gary Sick's many sources, for example, say that Mr. Bush attended a meeting in Paris with Iranians in October 1980, on a weekend just 2 weeks before the election. A recent television documentary here produced Secret Service records showing Mr. Bush was at a country club outside Washington for most of that weekend, playing tennis and golf, not campaigning, not seen in public. So far, Mr. Bush has stayed silent.
It's interesting because in most cases, when somebody is genuinely innocent and somebody makes a horrendous charge, an outrageous charge about something that they've done, they rush out to defend themselves and proclaim their innocence. The White House, in this case, and all of the people involved in the campaign, with the exception of Richard Allen, have all stayed absolutely silent.
Richard Allen, Mr. Reagan's national security advisor, is indeed the only administration figure to speak publicly about any deal with the Iranians.
Was I capable of doing it? Yes, of course. Would I have done it? Did I do it? No. Was Bill Casey capable? Of course he was capable of doing it. Did he do it? I believe he did not. With all my heart, I believe he did not.
So what did the Iranians say? Today in Paris, former Iranian President Abul Hassan Bani made his strongest statements yet about a deal, about Donald Gregg's involvement and George Bush.
Certainement, il y avait un deal secret entre les mollahs iraniens et les candidats Reagan et Bush pour retarder les otages, la libération des otages contre beaucoup de choses. Parmi ces beaucoup de choses, c'est les armes. On m'a donné un document, ça c'est le timing de M. Gregg, conseiller de M. Bush, conseiller de sécurité de M. Bush. Comme vous pouvez constater, ici, 20 octobre, c'est vite. C'est le jour où on dit qu'ils ont passé à Paris pour signer, disons, l'accord. Le 20 octobre, c'est le jour qu'on dit qu'ils sont venus à Paris pour signer l'accord. Oui, à mon avis, il faut une tête de CIA pour organiser ce dealing secret. Et cette tête n'était pas Reagan, c'était Bush. Donc, à mon avis, c'est Bush qui a organisé tout ça. Mais est-ce que celui était présent? Il y a des sources qui disent oui.
Already former President Carter has suggested a public inquiry.
The main reason I would like to see an investigation, I'm not really calling for it, but I think it would be good, is to prove that it's not true. And I hope it is not true.
In the newsrooms of Washington and New York, the debate's beginning. The belief is the media will have to unearth something more concrete, but the potential's there.
If Bush was involved, this becomes Watergate.
So far, the American media have shown little interest in this. Even this afternoon's session on Capitol Hill has received scant attention here. The White House, for its part, repeats that there's no substance and nothing new in all this, but adds that Mr. Bani-Sadr's application for a visa to visit the United States next week and publicise his new book is being reconsidered and may be rejected.